Good morning. So there were several years ago, I met Julie at a coffee shop in New York City where I live, and there was immediate energy that was created in that conversation right off the bat. And an energy I'm sure many of you in this room probably feel every time you have the opportunity to cross paths or engage in a conversation or listen to an inspiring story that Julie has to share. And in that conversation, the energy kept building and building until there was a question asked, a question put on the table. What do you think about the idea of filling a bus and taking 40 young people from California to New York City across 2 weeks? I said, I love the idea. When do we get to do it? She's like, well, this summer. And it was about 8 weeks away. I got on the bus for Team Kids at that point and helped to organize that tour across America that was all about creating connection within ourselves, understanding who we are as people, as humans, not our titles, not our day-to-day responsibilities, but just as humans, the ups and the downs that we've navigated in our lives, and the service that we have the opportunity, the choice to do every day. As Arshay said, the choice is yours to lay a brick, and to not just put it down and move away, but to do it with intentionality. You saw in the very beginning of today's program all these headlines. Marianne Williamson says famously, it is not our darkness that frightens us most. It is our light. It's not those headlines that tell us all the negative stuff that's happening. It's the lights that are shining brightly in each of us and in each of our communities. And I want to invite many lights to join me on stage to share some of their insights about how do you spark connection with and for young people so that together we all can thrive. So I want to invite our speakers up to the stage. We're going to have a chance to meet each of them as we go. I'm going to invite Dr. Fine to join us as well. Feel free to grab a seat right up here. I also want to invite everybody here to engage in this conversation. So I'm going to tee us up. I've got a couple questions I'm going to ask each of our featured speakers, but I want to invite you to also join us. On the screen, you see a QR code for Slido. You can literally just bring up that Slido and submit questions as we go throughout the course of this conversation, starting with why. If you can't get the QR code for whatever reason, you can go to slido.com and just enter #TeamKids. It'll take you right in to where you can submit questions. If you don't have a question, but you see one that's been submitted by someone who's joining us virtually or in the room, you can also upvote questions. So feel free, if you like somebody else's, to bring it to the top of the list so we make sure we prioritize that. So let's start first. John, representing the Department of Education, I want to start by asking you, what is your why? Why are you on the bus? Why are you a part of this work?
Okay, so my most important why is that my son got to do Team Kids Challenge in Arlington, Virginia, where I live. It came to Arlington right when he was in 4th grade. And when we met Julie and Susan and others who came out to talk about it, I just thought, this is a brilliantly designed program, doesn't take school time out for teachers, and has this collaboration of really important local people in the community. And so my role at the U.S. Department of Education was at the time coordinating 2 programs, the Federal Homeless Education Program, which I still do to this day, and what's called the Neglected or Delinquent Program. Horrible words from 1967 in the federal statute, but it's prevention and intervention programs for the education of children and youth who are neglected, delinquent, or at risk. So I'm considered a subject matter expert in the department in delinquency prevention. Well, my own son was having quite a lot of behavioral issues. We knew the principal pretty well in 3rd, 4th grade, whatnot, and we just really wanted him to experience this program. Julie and my wife would take turns driving him to the school, and in 4th grade, you're on the team leadership council as well. And he had an awesome experience and wanted to come back the next year and do it. And to this day, I ask him, what influence do you think it had on him? He's this STEM kid, he's really into science, doesn't want to do all that social community stuff his parents are interested in, and he actually, did athletics, like crew in high school and whatnot, so hearing Arshay today was really moving. Now I really have an insight into him. Well, lo and behold, he's a first-year college student, and he wants to be a resident advisor for first-year students, and so that's what he'll be doing next year. And he is on the board of a multiracial student group and doing various campus-wide activism. And I said, well, what do you think, caused that? And he said, well, a lot of things caused it, but Team Kids was a great influence for him. So, I'm a believer out of real experience, and I do a lot of collaboration across the federal government in my jobs. Collaboration is not easy, and we're not funded, we're not evaluated in our collaborations very often, but I love the collaboration between public safety and public schools and other supporters in the community. And my brick that when I'm thinking what brick would I lay, I'm somebody who will say yes to collaborations, not knowing how it's going to go easy. And I think it's so important to bring, in the local community context, those are your biggest tax investments, right? Public school and public safety and all the support social services. So I also would love to see this around the country, and really grateful to be here today.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. So speaking of collaboration, there's a lot of times we throw the word around, but I always say collaboration is really the most effective whenever we are intentional about what it is that we're trying to accomplish throughout that collaboration. And Mo, you represent the National Association of School Resource Officers. So it's not just about having a school resource officer physically in a school, but it's about the connection that they're able to create with the students. So tell us a little bit about the why for you and your organization as well.
Well, the why for me is, as a former police officer and school resource officer, I recognized that we had the opportunity to really bridge the gap between law enforcement and youth. And I thought that was critically important. I was at a point in my career in the late 90s that I was mostly working, doing crime scene investigation, and had seen kind of the worst of situations. And then I came across this opportunity to supervise our school resource officers program. And when I went to the training that was offered by NASRO at the time, the first thing I heard in that training was about the critical importance of relationship building in that environment and truly bridging the gap between law enforcement and youth. And having the opportunity to do that for 12 years, I was able to see the potential for what that might look like. Someone posed a question to me after I had retired from that role and was operating as the executive director for this association. Why should we put more police with young people? It's only going to make things worse. And my response was, if we don't get it right with young people, we're never going to get it right. We're never going to be able to heal between communities and law enforcement. And I firmly believe that. That's become my life's work and the life's work of our members, is to seek the right ways to do that. And I think to add to that, just a few years ago, Julie, I guess it was 2018 or so, I'm suddenly on this virtual meeting with Julie Hudash. One of my staff members had encouraged me to talk with her, and I didn't know who she was. And so I'm like, what's Team Kids? And so we have this great conversation. I go home that night and tell my wife, not only are we coming to Irvine, California to see about this program, but we're going to stay at the home of these people that I don't even know. And so my point is, that's how deep the connection was in just about an hour-long conversation. And when I have the opportunity to engage with people like Julie, it's a really special opportunity. And the things that the potential for what our members can do in collaboration. You mentioned collaboration with Team Kids. Goodness, I don't know if there's even a ceiling on it. So that's it. That's my why. Bridging that gap.
Thank you, Mo. Mo, you just mentioned just the critical importance of getting it right. A week ago, I had the opportunity with retired detective Lorraine Marin from New York City Police Department to facilitate a Take Your Child to Work Day in the middle of New York City with one of our corporate partners, Macquarie Group. And I saw the light that you brought to that experience. And then I saw the video of the very first Team Kids Challenge in New York City, where you just lit up personally, and in turn, you created this ripple effect with so many of the kids that were there. And so I'm curious, Lorraine, what is your why? Why are you a part of this mission?
Okay, so I became part of this mission because it exceeded my expectations. And, serving the city of New York and being a New York City kid my whole life, I mean, literally, I lived in every borough. And to be honest, I was one of those kids in East New York. I grew up not too far from where the school was. And when Julie came, we all know this story. I'm like, this crazy lady from California coming here with her sunshine. Looked at my sergeant, I said, she's crazy. Like, but as a cop, as a police officer, you go to where they tell you, right? And so, you're assigned to this school. And as a cop too, and also like in your heart to help people, you want results, right? So when I'm here listening to her and I'm like, she's gonna be so disappointed when she leaves here and we don't make any money. And so long story short, she did it. She was able, us together with Julie, were able to exceed expectations, right? And I say that to say because many times our thought process, right, our minds, when we see kids, automatically goes to a place like wherever, like it never goes further than this, right? And so what I love about Team Kids, what my light is that we could always break that glass ceiling. A kid could always exceed and go way beyond whatever you think that kid could do, way beyond that. And I know that for a fact because I've experienced it in my own life, in my personal life, myself. I'm the first cop in my family, first person to buy a home in my family. And I've seen it with kids. And to be able, my light to continue to shine and keep that light and that oil burning on the bottom of my lamp is when I see kids and I make a difference. It's not only a difference in that kid's life, but you're breaking generational curses. Because the kid is not only gonna make a difference, right? That kid will be the first homeowner in his family. That kid will be, and then he starts setting the trend. And then that other kid, if she could buy a home, if my cousin or whoever could buy a home, I could do it too. And it just keeps going up and up and up, right? So like, just an example in my personal life, I was the first one to buy a home in my family at 28 years old, right? And so my little brother, I don't know, he's got 8 houses now. 8 houses, and he's like 38. And this is how it is with kids, right? You break that generational curse, right? So my father was an inmate in a jail cell, or my father was a criminal, and all the cops or the teachers and people that worked in the same neighborhood for 20, 30 years, we know this family for this, right? But then you get this one kid from that family, and he changes the name forevermore. He makes a difference. And that's what keeps my light burning. That's what keeps me going. And I see that every day. I see that in the difference in kids that I mentored. I see that every day. As a cop in New York City, we see a lot of horrible things. I worked a lot of those protests. I see a lot of hate on both sides. A lot of bad things. But when I see kids, I don't see that. When I see kids, I see hope. When I see kids, I see a difference. I see Julie's, this organization, Teen Kids, making a difference. Kids wanting to give back if they should just give the opportunity, for people to believe in them, for people to see past, what their thought process is, but to see past that and to see hope and to see a future. And again, kids know when you're fake. You can't fake it with kids. You can't be like, yes, because you see that too in the department. I'm gonna get my shield and I'm gonna get promoted because I'm gonna work so hard. It's never really about the kid. It's about you, right? So when we really make it about the kids know that. The kids know it's really about me. This lady's not fake. She's really here to try to help me, right? She's not here to just make a name for herself. And again, that's what keeps my light burning.
I love that.
That's what keeps my light burning.
Another aspect of our community that's so important, we heard about this morning, is just the mental health and wellness, the physical health and well-being of our kids. And Dr. Marc Lerner, representing as a pediatrician, someone who has been the pediatrician to Julie's all 5 kids, and also someone who's a huge advocate right now for children's mental health and wellness and children's well-being. What's your why? What is it that you hope to accomplish through this shared mission?
So first of all, I have to acknowledge that my why to Teen Kids really emerged from Nancy Robinson, Julie's mom. And so I had a chance to meet and work together with Nancy, taking care of very tiny, prematurely born babies and trying to support their future and their wellness. And she was just, you know, as you might not be surprised to hear, the glue. She was the source of momentum for a program that wasn't necessarily a priority for so many individuals around a busy hospital, but was very, very important for the future of those children. And through that process, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Julie, to meet Molly, to meet the family, race kids, and that was really where my focus was. And Julie would come in and say, I have this thing I'm doing, and it sounds good, and I'd say, you go, girl. But I had no idea. And my life and my focus has been towards children. And I found what has been transformational for me have been opportunities to engage with others who are working with what I would call my patient, but they call their student, or they call that troublemaker. Or whatever it might be. And it's been really an opportunity to work with educators. I ended up getting involved as the medical officer for our Orange County schools and seeing the process of what school nurses bring to children every day in terms of trying to, make sure that students are well and ready to learn, in part by supporting families, bringing them glasses when they have no means to be able to get spectacles so that they can see the board, bringing them food, seeing the food staff at schools and the work that has gone on, for example, during the pandemic to bring, breakfast, lunch, and dinner out to kids who could not access that, and recognizing, the work of the custodial staff who was working on airflow and water and all the various other kinds of things that were happening. What a wonderful opportunity for me, where I had been basically sort of the person who, Julie would bring in the kids and I'd give them an injection and they would give me a howl, and I think, no, somebody had to do it, and my position was in a different, a different place. Over time, I've come to see us as pediatricians needing to ask more intentionally about anxiety and about depression, and knowing our community and knowing our resources. But I would tell you, the American Academy of Pediatrics recognizes where the action's at. We've been in Chicago. Our national headquarters is very close to Chicago. And we're meeting about green school spaces. We're talking about the nature deficit disorder, the experience that Arshay is talking about when kids are out on the water or kids are out in our parks, and the barriers that we need to work on. We're now talking about giving out a Park RX, where we're writing a prescription to get out to environments that help to build the wellness of children. And so, yes, there's an aspect of my responsibilities for the kids who are involved in these challenges to think about their health and mental health labels. And to try and provide supports, whether that may be medical in nature or psychological in nature. But the other aspect of it is to say, what do we need to do as a community that really helps to create the soil that allows that tree to begin to grow that child may not sit under, but that allows for their future. And so it's been a great path, and obviously Team Kids really has paved a path that allows that kind of work to go forward.
Absolutely. When we talk about just nurturing a community where all kids can thrive, two of the core pillars of that, from my perspective, are about exposure and about representation. And Jackie, your light, from the moment I met you at our staff retreat, when you shared part of your story, was about, as a UCI grad, as someone who's a Team Kids coach who also spends time with Boys and Girls Club in the area, it's about giving people something that maybe you didn't see earlier. And so tell us a little bit about why you're a part of the team.
Yeah, so how I started at Team Kids, I was a UCI intern. So I was trying to, look for my internships, the field study catalog and everything like that. I was scrolling through. I was like, okay, you know what? I want to work with kids, get that experience in. And then I saw Team Kids and I saw the position coach. I was like, I'm not really good at sports. But then I looked through and I was like, okay, I don't have to run and things like that and throw a ball, right? So like I submitted my application, I was like waiting, and it was like during the summer, still COVID. So I was still at home, I wanted something to do, and so our program director, Marissa, messaged me. I was so excited, got my interview down. I didn't tell my parents about this. And then Marissa's like, yes, like we'll have you on board. I was like, yes, I've never had a job before. So that was the first time I ever heard someone say yes and go through an interview. So I had run to, downstairs. I told my mom, I was like, I got in. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, so I had to explain everything to her, and she was so excited. And then it was still during COVID, so they were doing programs in Compton through Zoom. So I was really interested what kind of impact we could make through an online program. So I sat there at my computer and like watched all the coaches, how they interacted with kids. And some of them have their, cameras off the first week. Next week, most of the kids had their cameras on because, they wanted that personal interaction with us as well. And I think that having someone else to talk to, because I know it was a time when kids, they were stuck at home. You don't know what kind of lives they have going home and then coming back from school. So it was really interesting to see that. And I was really inspired by how much the coaches cared for the kids. So since then, I wanted to become a coach. I had realized that you needed public speaking skills. I was not confident in my public speaking skills. I grew up a shy kid. My mom's like, we'll see how you do. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. So I came on board. I actually got to do programs in person. I saw all the kids in front of me. I was very nervous. And I feel like working with Team Kids, it really built my confidence. And I feel like showing that to other kids in the audience was just amazing, at least seeing the smiles on their faces. I sometimes tell them, I'm a shy kid, and they're like, what, really? I'm like, yes, I'm not really good at interacting with people, but now I feel more confident in that. And so since then, I really wanted to be a role model for kids, who really don't feel like they can speak up, and I want to tell them, you can. They just need someone in their environment to tell them, you got this, you can change the world. You just have to be confident in yourself and, believe in that. Because when I think of Team Kids, I didn't have that growing up, and if I had this program, I feel like I would have gained that confidence early on and actually, want to change the world. Now that I'm working with Team Kids, I'm like donating my clothes everywhere, and I'm like taking towels and things like that, things that I have that I feel like I want to give back to. So giving back and showing that to kids is really amazing. So,
Jackie, I want to ask you a quick follow-up question, because so often we talk about doing things for kids,
yes.
But there's this great power that can take place whenever we do it with them,
Yeah.
as we've talked about so far today. Tactically, though, what does that look like in practice?
So in practice, we actually engage with students for a couple of weeks. We get a group of kids, and we ask them, like, what do you want to change about the world? What difference do you want to make? We have had kids, talk about COVID. They've actually told us experiences that, family members having, cancer and things like that. Helping out animals, environment, anything. They actually know the charities like in their community as well, which is really interesting. So we actually have discussions with them of like, why is it important, right? So I think that like in practice, us being there, our presence is enough. Like we have a whole whiteboard, but being there with them, our presence, listening to them being heard is something really amazing and to be able to see. So when we do our carnivals, we have public safety come in, and like they're the stars of the show. When they walk in, they're like, whoa, like they're actually at our school. And like I was really amazed by that too, because I only see them in the community and like off to work, but they actually get to be silly and like, face paint, nail painting. It's really interesting to see. I think I would have wanted to see that when I was a kid, but really having them engage in that kind of experience, like not only seeing them in uniform but also interacting with them as, police officers being kids or like firefighters. I know that in most circumstances when they see them, it's not a good situation, right? But actually seeing them at at their own school, they actually get to see what they are like, because I know they wear so much gear that you can't really see their face, right? So that when they take all that off, it's like I'm a person in your community. Like, let's engage so you know who I am. I'm here to save you. I'm here to protect you. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to ask everybody in the room to raise your hand if you love data. One's for you, Dr. Fine. So,
Yes.
Dr. Fine, my question for you is, we know intrinsically that data is important, but sometimes we fear it. We want our programs to be the shining star of our communities. We want our collaborations to look their best in the spotlight. But what can we do as a community to lean into data to keep evolving and getting better and better at both collaboration and in advancing the shared mission?
Yes.
Data is scary. Everybody's afraid of data. And I remember 6 years ago talking to Julie about what this would look like and talking about how do we get schools and families and kids to do this, right? Nobody likes filling out surveys. Most of us, if you get called, right, to do a survey online or a phone call, you hang up, you delete that email. What I love about how Julie has embraced the data is trying to make the data collection, the experience fun for the kids, and as a part of helping us improve the experience for them. So as much as possible in every school where you're doing the Team Kids program, she's made it a part of the program itself, right? The data are still anonymous for the kids. They can share their actual feelings. And I love what you've done there, right? It's really important to me to keep this work going, though, right? We know from programs from last 3-4 decades of program evaluation research that fidelity matters. You can't just create cognitive behavioral therapy and then your therapist be as good as that therapist, right? Not everybody's going to react exactly the same way to your treatments, doctor. I'm sorry, but they won't. You know that. So what I love about what Julie is pushing for moving forward is continuing to collect the data on every school that we can to see what the impacts are on that particular kid, right, within that particular community. Because we cannot treat all communities exactly the same. They're going to have different experiences. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but I'm really thrilled that you've enabled me to step into this role as an outside, completely firewalled partner and collaborator for years, and to be able to give you that type of feedback along the way. So thank you.
I think, Dr. Fine, what I love about your response is just the importance of continuing to lean into it. It's easy to go get the funding to do an evaluation, look at the results, and move on. But to continually evaluate, to continually evolve what it is that you're doing is so important. John, from an education perspective, we've got to keep working at moving the classroom beyond the four walls of a traditional school and getting ourselves out into the community with community partners like public safety and so many others. What's your best advice for those who are working in a school to broaden the definition of classroom?
Okay. I wanted to say first that this ongoing evaluation of Team Kids has been so wonderful to see the growing evidence base for it. And Dr. Fine has been one of the best finds for Team Kids over the years. I had joined the advisory council over 8 years ago to think like a brilliantly designed program, right? It's a school-wide intervention, takes minimal instructional time from teachers, focuses on socio-emotional learning and aspects that schools are really struggling with. They are getting billions of dollars of COVID relief, for example, where that's a priority thing. But, a homeroom where a teacher shows a video or talks about an emotional item or socio-emotional growth is just not the same as kids coming together, participating in something, leading it as well, and feeling like, they can impact the community. So it's those pieces of it that I really would like to see brought out even more. And I think actually I've been trying to help Team Kids, because during the pandemic, I could join board meetings and whatnot, navigate the federal grant funding, right, in education, but also in Department of Justice and whatnot. And I would actually like to see even more on the education side, like school climate is probably being impacted by these Team Kids challenges coming back year after year. And we have validated surveys on, the the Institute for Educational Sciences that can be used, right? Including, students, instructional staff, parents, and other district staff, and really get some measures of that broader impact that is so hard to measure. And I think if we go even more in that direction, people will see the school and community benefits of having this kind of program that brings the community into the school. And that's not easy, right? Because of safety and child protection and whatnot, schools have a hard time with this. But Team Kids has figured out a way. So that's what I'd like to see in the future with our evaluations.
Absolutely. Now, Mo and Lorraine, I want to ask you a question around public safety. We talk about the impact of what Dr. Fine had shared with us of having public safety partnerships in our schools, but it also impacts those officers that are engaged. And they come in with perceptions. They come, just Lorraine, like your story of this crazy lady, what are we doing here, right? But it shifts over time. Mm-hmm. What can we keep doing to shift that perception amongst public safety officers?
Consistency. You got to stay consistent. I know many of the departments. It's hard because of they don't have enough cops. Safety is our priority, right? So putting them in schools is not really a priority. It's keeping victims safe. Victims of robbery, victims of burglaries. So many of these heads of the department. They can't assign all these cops, even in New York City, which we are the biggest department in the world, right? In the world, not just New York. It's 32,000 cops. They don't have enough officers to keep them in schools. But if they can just commit to keeping that same officer in the school, commitment, kids need to see that, right? Because a lot of the kids that I've encountered had so many disappointments in their life, right? So they finally connect with this cop. And when I used to also run cops and kids sports, and so my best players that when they didn't show up because they had a case or something happened, the look of disappointment on the kid's face because they made a connection, and they've been let down so many times in their life, and so consistency is important. And what I loved about cops and kids as well, like when I played with the sports, is I remember most of the cops, like I was talking to someone last night, cops are like the kids, kind of. Like I felt like I was the teacher and the cops and the kids were like their same mentality. Like I had to put everybody in check, like, hey, because they're so competitive, like this is a kid, I know he's tall, he's like, 6'2", but he's still only 15 years old. You can't like rebound like that on him. It's gonna get intense. But what I realized which was my aha moment when I said these things work, is not only does the perception change with the kids towards the cops, but the cop's perspective changes with the kid. So no longer is, that's that kid that's always hanging out in this corner. No, that's what I told you yesterday. That's Buki. That's Buki. That's, I know him. So when I see him, we're no longer looking at each other up and down. We're handshaking. We're talking about what you've been doing. And so that starts with trust and consistency. You can't have trust if you don't have consistency. They have to know that you're there for real, and they have to constantly see you. And with Team Kids, I like is that we meet not just for 1 week, not just for 2 weeks. They're going to see my face for 6 weeks, and they know they're going to see me there for 6 weeks, right? And I think that's how you build that connection, when they see me there for 6 weeks. So when I first started, it was like, don't talk to me, right, Julie? Don't talk to me. I don't like the cops. Till they're drawing pictures of me and giving it to me as a gift. And so that starts with they see me every week, they know I'm there for them, and they know who I am. You can't know me in one day. You have to have consistency.
I want to build off that theme of consistency, but I want to ask everybody here a quick question. How many of you have ever wanted to do something to make a difference, but felt like you did not have the resources to do it? Raise your hand. So the reality is, and Mo, this question is for you, the reality is that consistency is key, but sometimes we don't have the resources to enable that consistency in our schools with school resource officers, with public safety partnerships. So what are you doing at the National Association of School Resource Officers to keep working at that, to keep creating that consistency within your network?
Well, first of all, coming off the initial question, we have to be strategic and thoughtful in how we do this. And so I want to address one other issue before I get to that, is that if we are, as communities, put law enforcement in schools just to police the schools or just to be an armed guard, we're going to fail big time.
Amen. Yep.
We can't do that. And it's one of the things that our association has been so strong in messaging around that, and especially around best practices. This is the most unique assignment any law enforcement officer will ever be in. There's not another assignment that is this unique. And we have to make sure that we have the right people in that role. And that's getting more difficult. We're in the middle of a law enforcement recruiting crisis across this country, and that's not good. So the funding, the resources, how do we deal with that? I think that I point to a couple of states who have kind of taken that on as a project themselves, and Indiana is a good example of a state that has really done some things at the foundational level to provide state-level funding to schools, not only to hire good school resource officers, but also to be able to put some good security technologies in place, as well as a number of other school safety strategies. So it really, sometimes we want to lean on the federal government a little bit, for that funding. It can't all come from there. So we as communities have got to work together to figure out what is it that's important to us, what is a priority in terms of funding. And if it's not our youth, if it's not our kids, we're really backward in our thinking.
Mo, I just want to summarize what I heard you say, because I think tactically we're all looking for things to put into our action plans. On everybody's seat, there's a little notebook. And we opened today by talking about what are the dreams of our kids, what are the dreams of all of us to make this world a better place. If you flip your book over, it says actions. And so Arshay, you said this so beautifully in your keynote about we can't just dream, we can't just come up with a big vision and talk about it. We got to move ourselves into a point of action. And so Mo, what I heard you saying and so many others on the panel highlight is, first we got to start with our why. We got to be super intentional about why we're even interested in this mission to begin with. 2, we've got to get the right people around the table. 3, we got to put the right tools and resources in their hands so that they can do the jobs that they were hired to do, that they were recruited to do, right? And lastly, we got to celebrate what works by looking at the data and elevating those effective practices like the state of Indiana and others that you mentioned, so that people can keep learning from it and applying those lessons to how we keep evolving. So I want to close our conversation with Dr. Lerner, a question for you, because in our world today, sometimes it's hard to figure out what's the truth and what's not. And when we think about mental health and wellness, it seems like, just like the headlines that came up this morning, mental health and wellness is a crisis. We heard Attorney General saying that, so many pediatricians, teachers. Is mental health and wellness a critical need of our communities, or are we just increasing the awareness around it? From your perspective, seeing patients and collaborating with so many different community partners, what's your point on that?
So I think awareness is growing, but we're still struggling with stigma. And so being able to talk with people about these types of concerns, or to be able to reach out if you're experiencing a challenge, we still have quite a ways to go in that area. But trauma is being shared even more broadly. We talk about in pediatrics, on the basis of some scientific studies, adverse childhood experiences. And realizing that each adverse childhood experience that is loaded onto a child, a family, increases their risk for health, cancer, heart disease, as well as mental health, important concerns, substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. Well, the pandemic was an adverse childhood experience. Everybody in the world's number of adverse childhood experiences just went up by 1. And we know when you get above 4 and 5 adverse childhood experiences, the effects of an incarcerated parent, a parent loss, etc., that we really need to buckle down, because as organisms, our nervous systems are likely to move in a position of stress that is going to keep us from being able to grow and activate more. So I would say, yes, for sure, mental health related issues are going up. And people are more separated from each other. The Surgeon General has just been talking in the last day or two about loneliness. And we know that connecting with others and serving others, as these kids are doing through the projects that they are creating, is really the path, one of the most important paths out of these kinds of challenges. So this is, Teen Kids is a trauma-informed, intervention, and it's very important that we all be thinking about what we do to serve each other as a way to serve ourselves and our mental health vulnerability.
Awesome. I love Arshe's words as we close out our panel here about starting with why, where he said, you have to work really hard at calming the storm within. And one of the ways in which we can calm the storm within is by increasing our connection, as you just mentioned, right? And Dr. Brene Brown says connection is just not Jenny and I sitting next to each other. It's about feeling seen, heard, and valued, about being able to give and receive without fear of judgment. Mm-hmm. And each of these shining lights up on the stage, as well as many, many people here and beyond, are working really hard every day to create that type of connection for and with our young people. And that's what it means to start with why. To not give up no matter what the data is telling us is or is not working, but to keep at it, to keep working to get stronger and stronger for all of us. So I want to transition us, before you go to lunch, and we have an amazing lunch from our sponsors at Sergeant Pepperoni's, I want to invite two special student leaders, Pedro and Reina, along with our Team Kids coach, Isabel, up. They're going to demonstrate for everybody here one of our Team Kids Challenge activities that comes to life in the schools that Team Kids works in. Because at the end of the day, this work can get serious, this work can get overwhelming, but we got to keep play at the center of it. So, Isabel and team, it's over to you. Let's give our panel one round of applause.